Okay, welcome. It looks like we've got Brenda and Fawn and Sherry and Gloria with us and Andrea. I am just waiting. I'm just waiting for my other presenter to come on in and we'll get started. So it's always a little bit bumpy this first time using a new platform.
Hillary, do you need me to share?
No, I've got it shared.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
And I've already got the captions on. Jeff, are both Rachel and I visible? And we can go ahead and start now.
You're doing great.
Okay.
Looks good.
All right, Rachel, let's go ahead and get started. You start with introductions and then I'll go.
Okay. So my name is Rachel Reese, and I am the Washougal Community Branch Librarian and Manager. And I've been here in Washougal for almost 6 years. And during that time, Hillary and I have partnered on a lot of projects and had a lot of fun. So I will let her introduce herself and we'll continue with our presentation.
Hello, my name is Hillary Marshall, and I am the Library Media Specialist at Washougal High School in the same city where Rachel is the branch manager at our public library. So that is where our school and public library partnership begins. And I'm going to be starting my 9th year in Washougal this fall. So our partnership has really developed. So this is Washougal. We work in the southern part of our glorious state in the city of Washougal, which is alongside the beautiful Columbia River. It's the natural border between the state of Oregon. Now, Washougal is nicknamed the Gateway to the Gorge. And according to the U.S. Census of July 1st, 2019, these are some important population statistics to know about Washougal. It has a little over 16,000 residents, and primarily 88% of us are Caucasian, 6.8% Hispanic or Latino, 3.5% are Asian, and only about 1.8% are Black. What I want to do with these statistics is show you that Washougal is primarily a white, conservative community in close proximity to Portland, Oregon, which is a liberal urban center. Now, in terms of graduation rates, Washougal has 94.5% have been high school graduates. However, only about 32.1% have earned a bachelor's degree or higher. Again, I'm trying to point out that Washougal is also primarily a blue-collar community.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So that leads into how Hillary and I partnered on a lot of programs. We had an opportunity to have an author to come out, Blythe Woolston. And so I approached Hillary and said, hey, could we do something with the teens? And that's really where it got started. And then Imagined Ink is a teen writing contest that Hillary has helped judge and that we hold annually with the public library. And then we created Wild Panther Book Club, which is a teen-led book club. Hillary and I help facilitate, but we really try to develop leadership and empower the students to take ownership in that club, and they do an excellent job. And then from the Wild Panther Book Club, I run an adult book club at the library before COVID, and I wanted to do a cross-generational meeting. So the teens were just blowing it out of the water. They had great discussion. It was really insightful. And I was like, we need that energy in my adult book club. And so we created one meeting where we read All American Boys, and the discussion was held at the library and at the high school library, and it was excellent. And then from there, we've done our Clark County and our State of Washington Poet Laureates. We had a presentation at the high school. We also have a program called Connect Card FVRL, and that's where students have access to all our online databases, and teachers too. It's really to help the students have more tools for research and just school education help.
Well,
And then,
it
go
saves
ahead.
us a lot of money in the school library because those are access to these subject databases, and the public library funds that. So, in that partnership, we have more access to digital books as well as databases that I just don't have the budget for in my school library. Sorry, Rachel. Go
No, that was great. Thank you.
ahead.
And then on our side, it's so crucial to have that connection in the schools and to have people like Hillary championing those tools, because we can pay for it, but if they're not being used, it's not helping the kids or the teachers. So that is a really great thing. And then finally, we've done a lot of outreach in all the different levels, grade levels of schools with the STEM kits. So I've done after school programs. I've helped Hillary. We did 3D printing. It's just been,
We've done a lot with robotics.
yeah, robotics. Yep. So really fun, but really important things to bring to the students. So that's our partnership in a nutshell. So then, yeah, COVID changes. Give you an idea of March of last year, what was happening in the public library. We shut down March 15th, and we did not reopen for curbside until June 15th. The COVID changes, we were not open to the public. We were only offering hold pickup. So if they put an item on hold ahead of time, I'd bring it out to them. We did increase virtual programs. We had story time and a few of the book discussion groups, but in general, it was pretty shocking. We shut down pretty hard and very abruptly. In August, we had a virtual program called The Media Lies, Black Lives Matter, the protests in Portland, because again, we are right across the river from Portland, Oregon, and that was a huge thing that was happening socially across the country, but also right in our backyard. There was Sergio Olmos. He's a local reporter who I will talk about more later because he factors into a program that we want to share with you. So Hillary and I were in communication over the summer about how what was happening at the public library. Was she going to reopen? What was happening at the high school? And once we knew that the school was going to be hybrid or on virtual, I'm sorry, it started out virtual, correct, Hillary? In the fall, you were only online. I shared resources about how to do curbside. We got her up and going. And then we kind of talked about what we wanted to do, especially about she was going to be doing a project lit and different ideas for the fall. So that's where, yeah.
So that's where I jump in. And Andrea, I see your comment. Yeah, so many libraries around the state were shut. Public libraries were shut for like 15, school libraries were shut for 15 months, and public libraries. Yeah. So you were relying on your little free libraries. So this is why we came together. So in June, Washougal High School, my library, became a Project Lit chapter. And many of the ideas featured on the current events and many of the titles featured current events the community was experiencing. So this idea of Project Lit is a grassroots project born of a New Jersey English classroom, which inspires students to read diverse books around pertinent topics by authors of color to promote student leadership and activism to improve our world to a more socially just society. However, the high school library didn't have multiple copies of book titles, but the Fort Vancouver Regional Libraries did, and many of those titles were in book kits. So, Rachel.
Yeah, so we have book kits that we use for our book discussions, and we have teen book kits and adult book kits. So we talked about how we could use curbside to get physical books into the hands of the teens and our community members, but we could still have a virtual discussion since we couldn't meet in person. So public library wasn't using these kits at this time. And so that's what we decided. We picked the books that were also listed on the Project Lit. So we had Scythe, we had All American Boys, The Hate You Give, and then my friends group, they're a group of volunteers that help fund programs for the library. They helped us buy a kit of Born a Crime by Trevor Noah, and also With the Fire on High. And so those were the books that we had for the fall that covered us from September through January for one discussion each month. And we started with Trevor Noah because that was the Project Lit discussion book for September. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, across our nation.
Yeah.
So our dream was to really keep Washougal reading and providing opportunities for secondary students and community members to read and discuss diverse books. So we looked at the titles in the full project book list, which covers middle grade, which are more appropriate for middle school, although we read a lot of middle grade novels at the high school, so don't worry about that. And young adult, which are more appropriate for high school students because of the content, and decided on the titles that Rachel just shared. So Washougal Reads began. There were a lot of questions regarding how the program would run. Now, participants didn't have to read the books prior to attending. They could currently be reading the title. After the conversation, they might, go ahead and check it out and read it afterwards, or they've read it and they're ready to discuss it. All were welcome. So on this slide, we had it live for our families, and each book was the author's rationale for writing that particular novel. And these were our Washougal Read dates, our actual dates, and the discussions were all virtual. So Zoom links were created with our Washougal School District account and shared with Fort Vancouver Regional Library. For increased security, our Washougal High School Educational Technology, TOSA, Jay Bennett, monitored the wait room, the conversation, and was ready to remove participants if necessary. So for publicity for our Washougal High School community, like for our students and parents, I sent out information via Parent Square, our parent communication tool.
And on the public library side, we had the events listed in our online calendar, and we required registration. And then Hillary shared the Zoom link with me, and only registered participants would get that Zoom link an hour before the session started. And again, we did that for security because this was on the public library side, we hadn't done a lot of virtual programming previously, and we're afraid of like Zoom bombs and different things. So we wanted it to be secure so that the participants were only having the link. It wasn't out there for just anyone to come in on. We did for social media, we had our graphics department, what you see on the slide there, the public library graphics department created that as a flyer. We also had a Facebook post, and I also created Facebook events that linked to the online registration for them. And I'm trying to think, I think that was most of the advertising we did on our end. Okay. And then, next one. Are we up? There we go. Hillary, was there anything else I should have added on that, on the advertising and the creation? Oops. I lost Hillary, or did you all lose me? I'm sorry.
Looks like we lost Hillary for a minute.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah, so she wrote, oh, thank you, Andrea, you can see me. So the other thing we did, yes, there was a Washougal Reads promotion in the Post Record, which is our local paper. And the really great, we have a good relationship with the reporter. Yay, Hillary, you're back, we see you. I'm talking about the Post Record right now. Doug Flanagan is the local reporter, and he interviewed both Hillary and I, and they covered our program in the local paper. And so that was also additional publicity and just getting the information out in our community. And that was helpful. Absolutely. We had a really good turnout for the meeting following that article. So if you can talk to your local newspapers, I highly recommend it. Let them know what's happening, because they're usually interested, especially with schools and libraries. That's my plug for fostering that relationship. And we'll get to, I think we are on slide 10. If Hillary, it looks like she might be stuck again. Okay, I will keep talking. So we had a really great turnout for All American Boys. I would say that was our largest book discussion online. We had a couple police officers, the resource officer from the high school, and also just he didn't identify as a police officer until later in the discussion. So we thought it was just a community member, which was fantastic. And then Hillary and we had some teachers, and it was a very candid, really thought-provoking discussion. And All American Boys, if you are unfamiliar with it, it is about a young boy who is beaten by a police officer by mistake. He didn't commit the crime that the police officer thinks he did. And so again, it was very pertinent with what was happening socially across the country and in our community. That book is by Jason Reynolds and Brendan Cayley. And we really wanted to have a frank discussion about police brutality because our really heavy issues, Andrea. And that was kind of the intent behind Washougal Reads. So we wanted to have a safe place where people could come, and it was okay. It was okay to be ignorant, and it was okay to not really know. But we wanted them to still be able to have some actual discussion, not to debate each other, but to have discussion. And these books were a really good entry point. So I'm going to keep moving ahead. So we had the next discussion after All American Boys. We did, actually, let me tell you a little bit more about with All American Boys. So then we had this police brutality continued to be a topic in national media, our social construct, what was happening in Portland. And so we decided that in the spring when we had there's another book that dealt with that, we were going to have additional special speakers. So I will come back to that. Just hold that. That's my cliffhanger. But we also read an excellent title called With the Fire on High. And this was, Hillary did an amazing job with this. It was incorporated with the culinary arts instructor at the high school, Chef Hitchens, and she did an 8-week novel study with it, and they actually made food from the book. The students loved it, and it's about a Latina girl, a young teen mother, and how she handles that. And she's also, part Hispanic and part, I believe she was from Haiti. So she's Black as well, but she's not African American. And so in the book, they talk about that a lot, about cultural identity, racial identity. And the students were very appreciative. There was one Latina girl who actually commented that it was very nice to read that story because of the character that was similar to her, and to have that identity seen in a book. And we had a great discussion. And then, like I said, it was just a really well incorporated book into the curriculum at the high school. So partnering between us, but also even further within the high school. Hey, Hillary, I see you, but I don't know if anybody else can see you. I can't hear you. Okay. So in January, we had we brought our books back to talk about some police brutality again. Hillary, can you? I can see you again, but I'm not quite sure.
Maybe Hillary on the bottom of your screen, if you can hear us, maybe mute your video. That will help save some bandwidth. We'd love to see your face, but it's just frozen anyways right now.
Yeah. She's frozen. Okay.
And Rachel, I'd recommend if, as you were
Just
doing
keep
earlier,
going.
go ahead and share your slide deck and keep going, and then
Okay,
we'll see what we
I
can
can
do to
do
get
that.
Hillary on.
Okay, let me try that. I'll try sharing my slide deck. Okay, we're going to do one Chrome tab. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, and I will do, I'm presenting. Can you all see the presentation now? Oh, I think.
Yeah, Rachel, whatever you see on your screen there, like right now, the three of us and yours, that's exactly what the rest of us see.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
Okay. And then I will just keep doing, I'll get to the slide where we are at. Okay, so this was a picture of our discussion group for All American Boys. You can see we were all meeting virtually, and Hillary was really great about having everybody hold up their books and take a picture, and it was really fun. And you can see it was in all different formats, some print and some did the ebook. And I would, again, for this kind of where it's across the community, that is a great tip to have the book available in multiple formats. So even if we were getting the physical book out via curbside, as you can see with this one, with the Fire on High, I listened to it as an audio, excellent audio, by the way. But some people read the physical and some people would read the ebook. And just having that variety of the ways to access the book is key to have a whole community participation. No, we can't see you yet, Miss Hillary. Okay, and then this is where I was circling back to. In January, this discussion, we were really very lucky to have two speakers. We had the journalist who was covering from day one, he was there covering the Portland protests, Sergio Olmos, and then we also had our chief of police, the Washougal chief of police. They both joined us to talk about the book, which was The Hate You Give. And Chief Steinbraun had read the book, really liked it. So she was very excited to come and share with that discussion and to bring, her perspective from the police side. And with Sergio, he was seeing like the media side, like he had been at local protests. He was kind of like the aftermath of what happens when there is a case of a wrongful death or police brutality, something happening in the community. So it was really nice. And I wanted to share, this was my email. So it's very formulaic. So when we started inquiring with speakers and asking to get people to participate, this is essentially the email. So I just wanted you all to see it. We did not recreate the wheel every time. We changed out names and, we gave them the dates and times. And we'd say, give a first paragraph of briefly, like, what is it? Where did I hear about you? And in this case, he was referred to me by a coworker because he had already helped with a library program previously. And then I tell them what the program is about. Washougal Reads is a joint project. We're trying to get a lot of conversation about pertinent topics with books by authors of color, and then tell them a little bit about the book, like 1 or 2 sentences, and then invite them. So we'd really love to have you join our discussion. Here's the date and time. What do I want you to talk about? Specifically your perspective and the role that media plays. We understand your time is important. And even if you can give us 15 minutes. And I would sometimes I actually don't offer a stipend. If I don't have a stipend in the budget, then I don't offer it. But if I do, I value everyone's time. Sergio is a professional journalist. I know Wendy Steinbraun, she was more than happy to just volunteer her time. But if it's someone who would normally be being paid to talk to me or to talk to people at the library, I try to give them a little honorarium, even if it's only $25. And a lot of times they'll say that they don't need it. They're happy to speak for free, or they do things pro bono. But again, I like to offer it if I can. And then I just wrap it up, saying like last month we had local law enforcement join us. We're really hoping to have a high level of engagement. Thank you very much. That kind of thing. So that is the formula on how to recruit speakers for your events. That's what we use for email. Okay. And then our discussion was, for this particular discussion, because Sergio couldn't join us for the whole hour, we did do it more like an interview. So I had questions ahead of time that were set up that we asked Wendy Steinbraun, and then we asked Sergio Almos. So from a police perspective, this is a question that we had that I posed to them. What does it mean to you when you hear the phrase defund the police? And so she would answer, and the participants listened. And then I'd have a question for Sergio. As a reporter, what does that phrase mean to you, and how is it presented in the media? So it was different perspectives on basically the same point. And then at the end, we didn't have a lot of time for questions and answers from the participants, but they really appreciated hearing from both of our speakers. And I think it was really, they told us, we had a lot of comments from our participants afterwards saying how valuable that was, how much they appreciated hearing from those speakers. And that's what we wanted. We wanted a place for our community to come together and get good information. And again, like I said, have these tough discussions. And this was also one of our most attended events. I'm sorry, I misspoke earlier. The Hate U Give, we actually had more participants than All American Boys. This was our biggest discussion. And again, Hillary had taken a picture of it. Okay, I'll move along, just keeping an eye on time. So then we looked at the spring. So we said, okay, we're looking ahead at the remainder of the year. We got through, September through January. We all survived. We had good discussions. And what do we want to do? And so we decided we were going to keep going. We're going to try to keep having these discussions once, at least for the rest of the school year. And Hillary, we finalized our poster. I got graphics to make a new poster for the spring for Washougal Reads. And then Hillary received grant fund money from the NEA Foundation, and she purchased book kits with these titles. So Hoop Dreams. Hillary, are you back? Do I hear somebody?
I've been trying. I moved
Yay!
locations. You can hear me? Okay.
I can hear you.
I'm going to go.
All
okay.
right.
Can you see me? All right. So,
Hillary, you'd
yes?
recommend that on the bottom, you maybe mute your video because it looks like your bandwidth is still struggling to get everything through, but we can hear you now.
Okay. You think that would be better?
Yes,
okay.
You're back. Yay.
All righty. Sorry. Goodness. Anyways, so yeah, these were all of our Washougal reads for the remainder of the year, and I had written the NEA Foundation grant. So the Fort Vancouver Regional Library members could check out copies from the library. And I also promoted, you'll see at the very bottom of the slide, the Portland Book Festival was going on, and that was a free virtual book event that I presented.
I started to talk about our process a little bit already with the email on how we reached out and tried to get speakers to our events, to our online discussions. But in the actual discussion, I'll talk about that process a little bit. So we always chose an icebreaker that related to the book. So the basic sections were, we would come up with questions, we'd come up with quotes, as needed, we'd come up with interview. And when I say we, this was Hillary and I coming up with the book discussion questions, the quotes, and the interview questions. And then we would close with the shared resources. Like Hillary would always show the Project Lit slide that had all of the titles on it and what events were coming up with Project Lit. And so let's go forward. I also, it was really important because it was a public event. I mean, it's important for the high school as well, but again, because we were a public library, we have a patron code of conduct, and we, again, wanted good discussion, not debate. And so we had some conversation ground rules. So this is what we would this is what we would show on the slide. And, you know, you have to communicate. It's okay if you feel challenged. It's okay if you challenge other people, but it has to be a productive discussion. And this is a safe space. Like, we all come with different experiences and background. I myself am very ignorant about many things, and so that's okay. And I'm here to learn. And so we just, Hillary and I think, tried to model and also, you know, use ourselves like we don't know. So we're having these conversations and reading these books to learn more. Okay. And then again, this slide talks to that as well. This is create a trusting and safe space, you know, engage in dialogue, not debate, be open and transparent, be curious, you know, willing to admit and make mistakes, but always assume a positive intent.
And we got a lot of these ideas from Courageous Conversations and some of this, you know, like discussion guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
So then we moved on, because it was in a virtual platform, we started each meeting with Zoom etiquette, right? So if they were like a new Zoom user, welcome to the world of instruction that we're now living in at Washougal High School. And then we'd go through the Zoom tools and we'd read through this slide, and we would first introduce our moderator, who was Mr. Jay Bennett, our educational technology TOSA at the high school. And we would navigate all the tools. Now, as the school year progressed, this was still used. We still did this at the beginning, but took very little time.
Yeah.
And we never had a Zoom incident. Yay!
I know. We were worried about it, and nothing ever happened. It was great.
So then we would use an icebreaker related to a topic that was covered in the book. So this is The Hate You Give. The main character, Star Carter, loved her kicks. So our opening question in the community was, what was your favorite pair of shoes growing up? And we'd have them type that in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually I would run the quotes section. And although Rachel and I would pre-select those, and we would try to keep it to 5 quotes, requiring 5 readers once Washougal Reads was going on. So then I would ask for reader 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then participants would be assigned. As we forwarded through the slides, I would remind the participants. For example, we'll give you this example. Number 1, Rachel.
Sometimes, yeah, I'm here. Sometimes you can do everything right and things will still go wrong. The key is to never stop doing right. And that was a quote from The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. And it was Lisa, and she was talking to her, Lisa, the mom, is talking to her daughter, Star. So, you know, we would just go through and read these quotes, and everyone would take turns, and it went really well. And then we would move into the discussion questions, and they were, I think we have an example of one of those as well, but we wrote them together. A lot of times we found them online, or, you know, I would come up with just as we were reading, I'd come up with a question like, oh, I want to ask this to the group. And then we would narrow them down. We tried again to keep them to about 5 or so, just due to time constraint. And then we would order them so that it made logical sense, how one question could kind of flow into the next. And I primarily took this on because I was comfortable with the doing the discussions questions, because I do it all the time for the adult book group, and I liked it.
And I was really nervous, to be honest, to lead, because some of our questions were really probing. So Rachel kind of mentored me also. And as the Washougal Reads went on, we started to kind of share the discussion question running. So she helped grow my practice as a librarian.
Yeah. And Hillary always put together our presentation. We reused but she was the one behind this beautiful template that you see, and having our little slides always ready. And she helped me that way. So this is how we partner with each other. And this is an example of a discussion question from The Hate U Give. So this book emphasizes the importance of having a voice and speaking out. How do you believe the protests tie into this? Do you agree with the ways Star reacted? What would you have done in her position? And then I think that it's in the virtual world, as in person, it's always important to pause. And Hillary and I would monitor that we could see our group. And so, yes, they did use the chat functions, but a lot of times it was just unmuting, and sometimes someone would start talking, and then I would have to come back and say, oh, Hillary, I saw that you unmuted yourself. Do you have something that you wanted to add? So as the facilitator, you want to keep an eye on your participants as you're going through the discussion questions. Okay.
Yeah, this was always dependent on time, because we had a straight hour, but I always would go 5 minutes before that hour was up, because the high school students were on a really strict lunch schedule, and then they had to get to their class. So, but I would launch into some announcements. So this particular announcement tied directly to the Washougal High School Library collection. To keep students reading, as this title, Concrete Rose, is actually the prequel to The Hate U Give, and I had just purchased it, and it was coming to our library. And then I would also close with the monthly National Project Lit opportunities. So each month, nationally, Project Lit features an author and their work. So for this particular The Hate U Give session, which we did in January, February, we were looking at Justin Reynolds and featuring all the titles he had written. So some Project Lit communities read their work in preparation, but regardless, all Project Lit chapters were invited to the virtual meetings. So this was our first year being a Project Lit chapter, first year doing Washougal Reads. So we didn't coincide very much with the National Project Lit, except for our September read of Born a Crime. But this is something that we're hoping to do as we grow with this project.
Yeah. Good. So, what we read is what we do is a little bit of the mantra that Hillary and I took on, and that was part of, again, why we specifically chose the titles, and we did Washougal Reads, and the Project Lit titles were what we read from. Again, we wanted the community to be talking and discussing, because whether we really like it or not, and again, our community is primarily white and blue collar, there's things happening in the world. And again, there was a lot of, it was during COVID, it was just a fraught time, and there was a lot of stress. And so we wanted to make sure that we had an outlet for our community. One of the things that I did in the public library to help, again, because no one could come through the doors, I used our front windows and I created displays in the windows, or I should say my staff helped me do that. So all the Washougal Reads titles were on display. We put a lot of the Project Lit titles on hold and also displayed them in the windows. So a little bit late to the game for sure, but our library has been working on diversity, equity, and inclusion with, with our staff, in our culture, in our practices. We're developing a DEI lens, and we've been working with a consultant. So this is very integral to our public library. And again, it just made perfect sense to do this partnership with Hillary and provide this for the community, because we were working on it ourselves. And yeah, we just wanted the citizens to be able to talk and learn. Hillary, do you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, we really took some, like I said, remember, Washougal is primarily white, very conservative, and we did a real stretch book for me and my community was the 57 bus, and that is talking about transgender, and it's talking about a hate crime, and it's talking about forgiveness, like in a restorative justice situation. So it fit with, like, we do PBIS, and it also fit with just bringing our LGBTQ straight to the forefront of our discussion and focusing on transgender. And that session, I don't know if we had any community members. I know we had principals, counselors, and students, and the teen discussion there was just incredible. I think that was the most endearing one to me. The Hate You Give was definitely our most attended one, but that 57 bus discussion was super authentic.
And the stretch novel for me was Monday's Not Coming, and that was about child abuse and people losing their community, and then the repercussions of that, and I think just how overlooked little girls are, and especially if you are a little girl of color. And it just was heartbreaking to me. Like, that book really affected me. So I think, like Hillary is saying, that there were stretch novels for her. I definitely experienced that as well. And I think it makes us better at our jobs and doing reader advisory. And it was very interesting for me as a professional to hear, like, what the teens thought and what books resonated with them, and specifically what topics and what themes in the books resonated with them. So if you do decide to do this in your own community, be prepared, because there's a lot more depth than you would sometimes expect. And I just am so grateful. I continue to learn from them all the time.
Yeah. So we're in the last 10 minutes of our session, but I do want to reiterate that we really stuck with topics that were pertinent at the time in our community. So as you think about possibly bringing this to your community, start with, what are some topics of interest that is important to your community? And then pair that with local speakers and leaders who could join you in that discussion. But we also wanted to leave time for question and answer. So you can use the chat to brainstorm some ideas that you would have, or topics that you would like to, or leaders you'd like to bring in. Or if you have any questions about the program, Rachel and I would love for you to put them in the chat so we can answer them as best we can.
Yeah, thank you all. And as Hillary was saying, we did invite other folks. Like, I emailed our mayor. We reached out to a lot of people, and even if they couldn't come, they at least knew about it. And some of them would say, "Oh, I'll read the book. I might not be able to make the discussion." And that's great, because at least if they're aware of the conversations and the concerns in the community, that's a win as well. So I just, encourage you that if you can't get certain speakers or they don't show up to the discussion, don't think that you're not making an impact, because just spreading the word and doing your work, you are making an impact.
And I wrote to Jean Luen Yang, and he's the author and artist of Dragon Hoops. And I heard directly from him, and then I'd always post to my Twitter account, thank you to the author, thank you to Project Lit. And he actually responded and, it had a Twitter chat with me. It was awesome. Yeah, Andrea, thank you for your comments. We're really proud of our partnership here in Washougal, and it's a 8-year strong partnership, and we are still looking at growing it next year as well. We did decide that one book a month is a lot, and so we have kind of trimmed back our expectations for the fall, and so we're going to do one book in the fall. And we're going to promote it for 2 months and then probably talk about it in November. And then we're going to do a winter book. And I think what Rachel and I were deciding on was probably February. So you would have through the holidays and, several months to promote it. But we're going to go down to 2, one for fall, one for winter. And we're not going to touch spring because that just gets so busy with the high school with graduation and end of year testing and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Did anyone have any specific questions for us?
I think if you're a school librarian out there or a school administrator, I think it started with me. Our partnership started with me. So what I did is I got hired at Washougal High School 9 years ago, and I drove right after I was hired. I drove to the public library. I walked in. I said, hi. I introduced myself to the branch manager at the time, and Rachel was in there. She wasn't quite in the position she's in now, but I went in and I met them. And so I took the first step going to our public library. So I would encourage the school community to reach out to your public libraries because they are very well funded and they need the schools to actually use the resources they're so well funded for. So it's an incredible partnership.
Yeah, I can't say enough about how instrumental Hillary has been in bringing our tools to the students and to the community in general. So yeah, through Hillary, I was able to do an adult pottery program. So, she said, oh, talk to the art teacher. You need a kiln. Maybe you can use the art room. So it's just, this partnership can go, it has gone many places and it will continue to go because we both brainstorm, we both think outside the box. We think about what's best for our community, and then we look at ways to make it happen. And I think we're both very much, yes, how do we do it versus no, that's not going to work. So it's also an attitude I think that Hillary and I have that really adds to the partnership.
And periodically, I actually go and visit with the school board and kind of give them a state of the library in our district. And I don't know about you, but my school board was really appreciative. I gave them financial numbers of how much we saved financially for the district, but how many more resources we were putting into action because of the funding from the public library. So the board was really impressed with that and, wanting to, encourage our partnership. So are there any further questions about how to start this, where to get going?
Topics you might talk about in your community?
We'd love to have ideas about what topics or leaders or speakers you would consider joining in your community or promoting. I'd be curious to hear in our room, we have several people in our room still, is where are you in this state? Or the nation. I think it can be across the United States. So I actually live in Portland, Oregon, but I commute across the river to Washougal for school.
And I live in Vancouver, Washington, but I commute east to Washougal for work. Oh, nice.
Goldendale. Welcome, Sherry.
And Julie's in from Vancouver. Yay! In the coop.
Nice. Oh, Maple Valley. Good. Chimacum, Washington. Wow, do you have to, Maristone Island, do you have to like coming in?
Take a ferry?
Oh, great, Sherry. You're beginning a new literacy position and you're excited to work with the local library. They're going to be a great resource. Oh, Fawn, you've got a bridge. Okay. I actually worked at Camp Parsons there in Brennan, and, you know, that's where all the students go for high schools in Chimacum, I believe. So I know that I went to a session at I think it was a Washington Library Association conference, and I saw what they were doing out on the peninsula with their public libraries, all the STEM programming, and that gave me the idea to go into the public library and say, hey, Rachel, I saw this at this conference. Do you guys have any like STEM kits? She's like, in fact, we do.
Yep.
So
yeah, the technology, the STEM, we didn't talk about that in this particular presentation, but Hillary and I have done a lot of partnership with STEM, and that's really fun. If you have some robotics, or if you have a library that has a 3D printer that you can take to the school, or if you have your own and that you have a maker librarian, I encourage you to reach out. There's some great partnerships that could happen with that.
Well, the session's going to automatically close at 10:55. I really want to thank you for your patience and my technology. I apologize. That was really bumpy. Rachel, I'm really proud of you. You did the whole presentation. Yeah. So, and thank you for your time. I hope you find the whole summit really worth your while.